guys, and welcome back to Digital Artcast. Back here now with an interview and speaking to our probably second ever 3D artist, or main 3D artist on the channel. Mr. Jason Hill has joined us here from currently Respawn Studios. So thanks for joining us, Jason. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. Number two.
Yeah, number two. Yeah, second only.
Nice.
It's a privilege in this Artcast, so yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, we were talking about this earlier before we started, but you know, you and me have kind of had each other. I think it was about 2 years ago or something close to that. I think it was actually just before you moved to Respawn. I think you were still at Turtle Rock at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously that's been a couple of years since, and you know, you've obviously been working on a lot of stuff. But obviously, you know, as we do in these interviews, kind of take us back to the origin story, the Batman beginnings. But yeah, how did you get into art? You know, how did you kind of start your journey into? Well, now obviously you're a 3D character artist. So was that the main goal? You know, when you were younger, was that what you wanted to do?
I think so. In hindsight, I don't know. I don't feel like there was ever a clear moment, but I was definitely propelled that way. When I was 5, my dad got me a computer, which I think at the time was really unconventional. I think that happens more nowadays.
Yeah.
But at the time, like, he was just an enthusiast for Mac computers, and so he bought me. So like pretty much my whole life, he would buy himself like a newer Mac computer. He would do work on it all the time. He was a math teacher.
All right. Yeah.
And I think he was just like fascinated by the product, you know, also. And then I would get his hand-me-down. So like when I was 5, I had this like old black and white Mac, and I would just like play on there. That's how I spent my time. Yeah. So I find it funny now that that's essentially what I do like most of my life, is I'm on a computer making stuff. And I feel like that's somehow connected. But the major influence for me to get into what I'm doing now was visual effects. Like similar to you, you're into it too. I think a lot of 3D guys are into a whole huge thing, so it seems like kind of a mess.
Yeah.
But the reason why I've gravitated towards characters in games is that it's such a challenge, and that also makes it like really rewarding. And you know, I just wanted to be a part of that bringing characters to life magic that like influenced me so much when I was a kid. I have such good memories, and at that time it's movies. We have plenty more moments like that in games, but kind of what inspired me was the visual effects breakout, you know, of the 90s and stuff, and those movies like Terminator and Abyss and all that, like Jurassic Park. And I wanted to do that, and games kind of provided a new frontier. Like at the time, it's still pretty fast moving, but at the time there was a lot of opportunity for growth and exploration, and you know, it's pretty new business in a way, and so I get to play around. And so I think that's why I just found myself here. But yeah, I've always been trying to learn more and more about 3D art, and characters seem like, you know, the most eclectic things, like the biggest challenge. So I always was aiming for that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's super interesting because characters is something. You know, we were talking about this again earlier, but you know, when I was in Access last year, I was, you know, hearing from the guys that character artists and animators are some of the hardest jobs they have filling, because it seems to be the most like you say, challenging. I think because anatomy plays into such a huge role of it, and it's such a complex thing to begin with. Because even just between anatomy, you've also got male and female, then you've got animals. So yeah, learning that stuff can be a super hard challenge, and then sculpting it, it can be, you know, intense. But did you do, like, I'm trying to even think, you know, you said you were using computers, but back then, what kind of stuff were you doing on the computer? Was it 2D, was it 3D, was it a mix of both, or?
Okay, yeah, so it was always 2D, but also a kind of weird, I feel like a lot of what my hobby was, and sometimes still is, and this has to do with, I think, a similarity between a lot of 3D artists, is I'm experimenting with stuff. You know, I'm trying stuff and I'm playing for the enjoyment of it. And I think when you're a kid, that's more natural to happen, like exploring around with computers and then discovering new ways to make fun stuff. So it was never like a specific goal. It was just having fun. And I think that's a thing that I try to keep with me, because new things come out all the time, and I try to not get too set. You know, I try to keep trying things, because things get easier and easier. But the real like switch into 3D, I have to credit this teacher I had in high school who like changed my life in a funny way, and he was giving me like some harsh love kind of teaching, and it worked out. Nice. Like when I wasn't a good student at all. And both my parents were teachers, so it's like ironic that I'm a terrible student. Oh, wow. I think I at least I tell myself that it helps me be a better teacher today, because I know like what lost my attention and stuff as a kid. Yeah. But I found I always loved drawing, and I always loved like escapism. I think that's a big thing that I'm still doing and being a part of today. Totally. And so in school, sometimes I would feel trapped, right? And so if I wasn't drawing, I was like reading a book or something. And sometimes I would just do that in class, which is like really disrespectful, and you shouldn't do that. And I would get bad grades. But one class was drafting, which is like a very technical drawing class. And I don't know how I found myself in there, but I was in there. And that mix was uncomfortable, but it allowed you to draw these incredibly crisp drawings. Now, if you know what like CAD is, that's what CAD is, like all architecture and stuff. But back in the day, you had to do drawings with these big T-squares, and they had to be very precise, and you used, mechanical pencils, and it looked like a computer made them, but that was before computers. So it taught me like this extreme constraint and accuracy. And at the time, I think it was good for me, and so I kept going back to that class because I did well in that class. And like I say, I felt like it was kind of good for me. The teacher, his name was Mr. Atsubo. Cool. He like, took me under his wing, even though I would talk to people. I was like a disruptive student probably. So he had to like wrangle me in. And by the third year of drafting, it turns into 3D, and they introduce you to 3D. And it just was extremely fascinating, I guess. Yeah. And that fascination hasn't worn off on me. It was just magic. And I don't know, like just learning that you could turn the camera around and make stuff in 3D. And at the time, I remember the program was called Rhino. So it's like one of these super old ones. Oh, yeah, sure. And when he said that Rhino was used to make the buildings in that Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, like I thought that was the coolest shit ever. I was like, oh my God. And I tried to like model a car with like NURBS and loft. Anyways, so that started my like path. And by my last year, he just sat me in the back of the class by myself, so I couldn't bother anybody. And he just he said, as long as you're messing around in Cinema 4D, you'll get an A. And so he just stuck me there on that computer. And yeah, so that really was awesome for me. I think it just allowed me to point my the qualities that made me maybe not so good at following directions or being a student, but it worked in figuring out how to make things with computers. Wow. So I think that was the big change into 3D. And then I just kept doing it. So I went to school. He also introduced me. This is kind of embarrassing, but it's funny how it worked out. So he told me about Art Center. And he introduced me to that whole thing. And like, I think he was really trying to save me, man. And it like totally worked out. I think he saw that I wasn't going to be able to like, go work at like a bank or be a doctor or some shit. So he was like, hey, why don't you follow this art and computer arts course? And he told me about Art Center. And then later I got something in the mail that was from the Art Institute. Oh. And I confused that with Art Center. So like I entered into one of their little like competitions to get a scholarship. And then so me and my folks went down there, and pretty much everybody got like a consolation prize of like $500 scholarship, which is nothing because like the school was $75,000 to $80,000. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And then my parents, I guess, were just like, hey, if you want to go to the school, we'll pay for you. You want to go? And I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't have a better idea. I actually thought I was going to join the military. That was my plan. Shit. And then my dad said, it was weird. Yeah, just one day, I think he knew that I was, planning to do it. And then he told me that they saved money. I'm an only child. So they must have just stashed money away when I was born. Yeah. And he said, you could just go to any school. You don't have to go to the military. And as long as you're going to a school, I'm pretty lucky. I had parents where they said, as long as you're doing something that you want to do and you can get a job, then do that. So they were really supportive, and they just like go to art school. And so that was an awesome thing that they did for me. And it's been my motivation to not like F up the whole time, like they sponsored me to do this. And so I always felt like, man, if I didn't make a career out of this, it would just be such a huge waste. So But
Yeah.
so far, so good.
Yeah.
Making stuff with computers.
Yeah.
And the world has actually gotten more and more jobs for this.
Yeah.
So it actually, luckily, really worked out for people like me.
Yeah, especially in 3D. I mean, I was just at IMAG in Paris for the conference there, and we were listening to Raphael Lacoste, who's the main art director just now for the Assassin's Creed franchise and has been since forever. But I can ask him a question and say, worldwide, studio-wise, how many 2D artists do you employ? And I'm waiting for thousands and thousands, but he was like, yeah, I think across most studios in the world we have about 100 2D artists, and I was like, oh my god, like it was such a small number. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe, yeah, and you can understand why 2D is such a competitive place to be in, because especially most game studios, like their 2D teams are super niche, whereas if you're working on a game or a movie, the 3D teams are hundreds of people, if not more. And yeah, that was probably the best decision, because something I want to talk about quickly is like a thing I noticed about you. I don't know if it is unique to probably where you stand as an artist, but apart from having, because like when I interviewed Marcin from Serie Projekt, like he obviously was a 3D artist, but he we had a whole conversation about 2D skills, and Marcin was saying, "Oh no, I should be drawing more. I know I should be," but he didn't actually, he didn't have a really strong 2D background. I didn't think he really drew at all. But you have a good actual, I could see you working as a 2D artist. Like you kind of have the not the best of both worlds, but yeah, you do have strong 2D skills. Do you find that that's helped you? Like, did you make a decision that you just weren't going to entertain the 2D stuff, that you wanted to do the 3D stuff over it, or I just try to wonder how your 2D, how that's informed your career, and why you chose to go that way, and and why you kind of keep drawing still, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, 2D was something I always did. That was the first thing I did. Yeah, I was drawing at a young age, so I did get over that hurdle. Later in life, I did switch kind of to 3D. That wasn't exactly conscious at the time. I was just following my interests.
Right.
But then, yeah, once I joined art school, Art Institute, say what you will about it. It's there's pros and cons, but they do a classical sort of method, a Italian method or whatever it's called, so there's life drawing and stuff. And that was great. I mean, that was a good experience for me. I think I'm really glad that they did teach that stuff and they taught art history.
Right.
And honestly, I really appreciate that, the opportunity to learn that stuff, just because it's interesting. And I do believe that art is all connected and kind of part of my life. And what I do is thinking about what I do and why I do it. I try not to get too caught up in the tool. But anyways, because drawing was taught then, I try to rediscover it, at that time, and kind of force myself to do it. Yeah. I still think today I use 2D occasionally because it's the right thing to do in the right situations. Like for sketching ideas, I see it as kind of a gradient. And for me, what I'm even in my personal work, if I were to do something just for what I want to do, the things that inspire me are those images from those movies, the things that are unbelievable done in a way that is believable. Yeah. That, to put a fine point on it. That's the thing that I'm inspired most by. So the final thing of whatever I would make would involve everything I could to make something look realistic. But throughout that process, sometimes it might even start with words or a little like yellow notebook I have stacks of over here.
Right.
And then sometimes it'll be a drawing, and I like to use Photoshop for doing paint overs a lot because it's so fast to visualize things. Right. But in terms of like a painter and an illustrator and a designer, yeah, I'm super weak at that stuff. So I stick to 3D, but I still try to design in 2D, but that's where my brain is in 3D now. Once ZBRUSH came out in college, and I started doing digital sculpting, that became my real love of making things and making models. Yeah. And that's really what I wish I could do that all the time. And I feel like it's a more richer experience too. Like 2D and 3D help me together in different ways. I think the truth is always there. Like what an arm looks like, or what good form looks like, or whatever is a personal thing for you to develop your own taste. Yep. But also once you understand something, you can depict it with anything. And for me, 3D was a better way, or at least for me, a more satisfying and enriching way to recreate something. I felt like I had a deeper understanding, if that makes sense. So it spoke to me, and I like to spend more time doing 3D now.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a shift that I've took more because I guess more because I've found myself lacking in 2D and that it doesn't spark my interest as much. Because when I took the course, I was looking to do more 2D concept, and I think the general appreciation I had for it at the time was that you made pretty pictures. But then there's a whole talk that Shadi Safari had gave at GDC a couple of years ago, and something I've actually heard from a couple of guys at IMAG over and over again is that now with concept, people aren't looking for concept artists. Studios need concept designers. Like I think people confuse when you say concept artist. You really are a designer. It's less
Yeah.
pretty pictures and more functionality and problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like that's a whole thing where I think now 3D is more methodical and mechanical for me. For me, like especially when I done my first hard surface sci-fi environment in Maya, it kind of felt like putting Lego together, and there was a
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction in that, kind of like model building when I done when I was younger. Like even I think not too long ago on your Instagram, you done a whole thing of like a Sunday where you were sculpting like a monkey head and listening to tunes and yeah, like
Yeah.
clay for me is always I've always had a huge fascination with modeling and sculpting in that sense. So I think that's why now I'm trying to turn my focus to 3D because you kind of get an instant feedback. I mean, you'd work on a sketch for a couple of months, but and you get a different result. But when I worked in that environment and through it through Substance Painter, the result I got at the end of it was something that I know I'm not trying to sound big-headed here, but I could see in a video game. Like I could see myself walking through
Yeah.
that corridor. Like all the little details I done, like blood dripping and water effects and lighting flickering on and off.
Oh yeah.
It felt more alive to me. And I think that's the same with 3D sculpting, right? There's an instant gratification of once you finish that character and you can pose it and turn it in different ways and add lighting. It feels more alive than 2D. Is that how you kind of feel with 3D sculpting?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's like a whole mix of stuff because I will say something. So okay, definitely more gratifying sometimes, and sometimes are instant when you do certain things. But when I think of like what I do, I think of it in these big projects, and I feel like they're like marathons.
Yeah,
I think if you're a certain kind of painter or you're a certain kind of designer, the thing that I'm actually jealous of them most is, I mean, obviously the ability to design, which is
yeah,
fucking awesome.
yeah,
But also they get to do more, in the same amount of time. Like
yeah,
probably the same with your environment. Like it's something where there's big sweats of time once you know what you're doing. Like once you make the plan, like you have the vision, you set out the plan, then you have to do some building. Then it is like Legos, right? And then it's
yeah,
like a marathon, and then like keeping the pace and being
yep,
determined, so
mhm,
that at the end you can finally have something. And maybe it's a deeper satisfaction because it takes that amount of time,
yeah,
but then also it's a richer experience because of things like you're talking about. And what I love is like seeing something that has the materials, because nowadays we have PBR and
yep,
we have like actual material measurements, and we can layer things up, and we have
mhm,
real-time lighting based on high dynamic range photographs. And so we're getting closer to in real time creating something that looks natural. And
yeah,
yeah, that's the most satisfying thing right now. I told you that ZBrush was my favorite thing, definitely my favorite way to model
yeah,
for like almost 10 years or something.
yeah.
But I still love digital sculpting. But right now, I think the most enjoyable thing I do is texturing things in Substance Painter,
Oh shit, man, yeah.
because of this, man. Oh my gosh, it's so
Oh,
amazing.
getting like the
Especially coming from years of Photoshop texturing, like, and I didn't
uh,
know that my life was bad, Like I was just like, this is what it is. And then, oh man, Substance Painter is yeah, for people that don't know, I mean, it lets you texture on models in real time. So it's almost like you're looking at your model in a video game with ultra settings on, and then
mhm,
you're actually working on the model in the context. And this is like the first time that this has been commercially like easy to access.
yeah,
I Substance Painter was the first time I actually textured directly onto my model.
wow,
There were other ways to kind of do it, but it's never been so good.
yeah,
And yeah, like that's definitely where I now feel this instant gratification, because it's like if I want to put dirt on a character's cheek or like nick some paint, I
yeah,
literally reach out and I do it on my Cintiq, and boom, I just chip paint off. And man, it's so much fun.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean it's the same like obviously because the sci-fi corridor I built was supposed to be infected. I mean it was totally inspired by Dead Space and Doom, and I would add like small chunks of blood or like some alien like life form taking over the part of like a pipe and then wrapping that form around the pipe and the blood splatter like yeah, and then putting it back into the scene and then lighting it and being oh yeah, that looks really cool. And yeah, like it's just a satisfaction of something I was kind of missing with 2D, where I was like, yeah, this looks alive. I feel like I said, I felt I could have walked through it in a game, and yeah, it's hard to explain, I think, unless you do the trade and you understand the tools. But yeah, there is more an excitement for me than the 2D stuff, because I'm not the kind of guy who would like, I don't sketch every day in my sketchbook, and I wasn't as disciplined as you really need to be if you want to be a 2D artist in this industry. And I knew that my 3D process was just, I enjoyed it, I had fun doing it, and for me it was one of the things I could get good at. In my own time I could learn things I want to learn. So yeah, it's a whole process. Although I'm super interested to hear your thoughts on the latest ZBrush release, because like that just kind of flipped in the last couple of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because they just had that announcement right for
they did 2018, right?
Yeah, the new tool sets they're putting in, and yeah, I'm just interested to get in it, and I'll be honest, I've done Maya in different renders for so long, and I've just recently got into Redshift, but yeah, ZBrush has still been totally untouched, and I'm super curious to how I'm going to handle that. Although people tell me the interface is super scary to get into for beginners, but I don't know. How do you feel about the program? Do you feel it's a good stepping stone, or can it take a bit of while to get used to? Or
yes, it could take a while to get used to. I have complicated feelings now with ZBrush, because we've had a long relationship, we've had this intimate bond now.
yeah.
I mean, I owe my whole career pretty much to ZBrush, but I've spent so much time in it. I definitely probably have, little things that other people don't. I also teach. I just started teaching last year, and so I'm very aware of now hearing, the perspective of people that are new. Yeah. And the thing that makes it scary, like to describe exactly what it is, I mean, I think it's great, and I still think it's probably best in class. I would say the only thing that maybe give it a run for its money right now is 3D Coat.
Right, yeah.
But when it comes specifically to making the highest quality hyperreal, like detailed characters, I don't see that ever happening still. So if someone does it in 3D Coat, then I'd be like, oh. But there's some things like layers, morph targets, and things like that in ZBrush give it, I think, that little bit of an edge. So when doing the top of the line stuff, you're probably going to use it, and maybe even sculpting feels better, but it could be just that I'm used to it. But still, I think ZBrush is the best. Yeah. What makes it difficult for new beginners is just the onboarding process. Like everything is tucked away in a shelf, so it's kind of like, it's just like going into a workshop for the first time by yourself, and then that's it. And then you have to just go around opening every drawer, so it's not fun. Yeah. And they invent words a lot. So all of the terminology that you need to know in ZBrush is not in anything else. So you can't just Google what they put a Z in front of everything, or or Dynamesh and Q remesh and all that stuff. So that's what makes it daunting, is it's a new learning experience. So you have to memorize a lot of things, and you have to get a little bit comfortable with the fundamentals of making new meshes all the time.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, because once you're in there messing around, it's the thing that feels most like digital clay, and that's kind of their brand, and that's what the people that use it all the time feel. Yeah. But I agree. We could do a much better job of getting that in the hands of people that want to make stuff. And that's kind of part of my mission on YouTube. And I want to start making more YouTube videos soon to get people like you. I know a lot of people that are interested. I've tried to onboard like people that I know in my life, some concept artists that, wanted to get into it. Because I think if you're doing concept art, you should at least be using 3D Coat or ZBrush.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you're not using 3D in your pipeline as a 2D artist these days, you're really going to struggle.
You're super handicapping yourself. Yeah, you have to be extremely strong at something else to counterbalance. Like you have to have you have to be one of the best in the world at something specific if you're not well-rounded, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know of plenty of 2D artists who are unbelievable painters, but yeah, even some guys I know that are doing some stuff for Magic are propping out base scenes in 3D and throwing a light in there,
Yeah.
and then that's half their stuff. That's half their day done. You know what I mean, like it's.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Why not? I mean, yeah, you learn it once, and
Mm,
maybe it's a couple weeks of being uncomfortable, but then yeah, then today you get accurate cameras, accurate lighting, perspective, things that are
yeah.
very difficult to recreate. And you get out of the box if you just do your due diligence up front and learn some programs that are pretty easy today to learn comparatively.
Oh, totally. I mean, like again, going back to Shadi, because the guy's he's run Pixel Brush forever and he's done so many talks, but he done a talk called the Law of Increasing Awesomeness, where he talked about you can walk up the mountain on the longest path, but and be like, I'm going to be a purist. I'm not going to use photo bashing or 3D or texturing or anything like that. But then you're then hindering yourself and taking longer. Sure, you'll be a purist, but then your journey will be a lot longer, and you'll hinder yourself once you get within a workload, because the guys I know now, even within studios who do 2D stuff, their ADs are expecting them to be at least experienced in either Maya, Modo, or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, especially with photo textures as well, because a lot of these guys, I was again when we did a talk with Raphael Lacoste about him working on Assassin's Creed, he was saying that you'll be expected to pump out a painting, if not every day, maybe every 2 days, and if you're not using photo textures, 3D or anything like that, you're not going to get a painting done that quickly by hand using traditional methods.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible, and I think that's what people don't understand, is that you're using these techniques as part of a pipeline, right? It is an industry, time is money, and you need to get quick results quickly, because you can't be waiting on an artist to spend a week on a painting, like one painting. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's not going to be, it's not going to be viable for the company at all. It's the same with 3D, right? Like you'll have only so many days to do a sculpt and have something up and running, because you're obviously a link in the chain, and if you take longer, then the next link in the chain's waiting for you, and there's nothing worse when another member of the team is waiting on you finishing work, because that is the worst feeling. So if you're 2D now and you're not using 3D as even a base or some kind of method, it is super hindering. Like even
Yeah.
guys I know who do 3D are like, oh no, I wouldn't want to learn how to texture or rig or like retop. Like I think especially within games and movies, you kind of need to know the whole pipeline. I think you'd agree with that, right?
I think of it like the more you know, just the more desirable you are,
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think it's just adding more skills makes you a more well-rounded player in the game.
Yeah.
And I think the more the merrier.
Mhm.
And another thing, to piggyback on what you're saying, something I have my eye on for a while, and it's becoming increasingly aware is, and especially now with the push for AI and people, now we have things like whatever that thing's called, like deep mimic or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, there's the AI. AI is going to play a bigger and bigger role in making things, like you say, fast. Like
Yeah.
most of what the art is now is a business, right? The entertainment business is huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're trying to save time,
Mhm.
and a lot of productions are trying to make things photorealistic.
Yeah.
So more and more things are going to get scanned, and more things are going to get automated. More and more things. It's going to be about, photo real quality and speed.
Yeah.
So I think rounding yourself out makes you more adaptable, and also I would suggest everyone, especially younger people that are like students of the game and learning how to get in and want to do something in the entertainment industry,
Mhm.
focus on strengthening the areas that can't be done with AI as easily or reproduced from photo scans. So
Yeah.
that means like things that aren't photo. So definitely your design skills, just design in general, and like coming up with taste and style and tone and understanding like why we make things and storytelling and things like that, like the reason behind everything, and not just rely on a method. There has been a time, and some people throughout history get really good at a style or really good at a method, and they can ride that the whole way. But nowadays it's all about being adapting, and I think as a 3D artist, I think this comes with the job, especially now that I've been doing it from a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
When I speak to younger people, at least with my career, it might have just been my career,
Mhm.
but all of my characters are different, which I like. But so what I've realized is, like, over time, what I'm getting good at or more comfortable with is starting a project that I don't know how to do, and then I learn how to do it.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
during
yeah.
that time, like, because I'm not just doing the same thing every time. There's definitely like these pillars, and I have a workflow, and I have techniques that I'm practiced with that can do various things, but there isn't a recipe that fits everything. So everything is a learning experience, and I think as long as you enjoy that kind of discovery and experimentation with like how to solve this problem. It's a lot of little problems. Then I think you're going to be all right. That works with 2D and 3D. I think it's like sometimes it feels like you're biting off more than you can chew, but the thing you're really practicing and getting like the muscle you're exercising is figuring out how to make something that you like, and that's kind of turns into what your taste is, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like it speaks to even like I mean, do you know Ryan Kingsland? Do you know the guy? Yeah. So Ryan, like, he talks about it like super often about how this industry is one of the few in the world professionally where you have to like prove so much of your talent before they even let you in for an interview. Like, and then once you're there, you don't even stop. You know, you have to constantly be making yourself valuable to the company. And yeah, it's I've definitely I've changed my vision of this industry in the last 5 years, but it is, I mean, not that it's impossible and not that it's not super rewarding, but yeah, it is a really hard job. And like that probably follows into sometimes what I talked to you about is like your first job in the industry. Like, I mean, how did that come about? And, you know, was there a culture shock there where you found yourself like, oh my god, I really need to fucking work hard now? Like there was like a shift of, oh my god, what am I doing? So yeah.
Yeah. I've got I don't know how much more time we got, but I got 2 stories about that.
Talk forever. You talk as long as you want, Jason.
All right, cool. Well, I'll tell you the first studio because it was actually pretty awesome. So I did have my kind of obligatory shitty experience when I was a freelancer for a second, or a contractor for a second after college. So it took a few months for me to even land a job after I graduated. And after I did this little contracty work, I was back, and then, you know, I just wanted a good job. I was kind of aiming for it the whole time probably, and I didn't want to feel like I was making a sacrifice. Yeah. And I don't know, when you get out of college, you're not sure what to do, and you're kind of feel like if you don't get hired immediately, you're like, oh man, what's going on, you know? So I would eventually just start applying to more and more places that I didn't know much about, and like going to different boards. So my first studio job came from a job posting on Polycount, which for all the game art people, they know about polycount.com. So yeah, on the Polycount boards, there was a job posting section back then. There might still be. And someone posted a job looking for a character artist. I responded, and he called me that day. And his name was Don. And he set up an interview for the following day. And I drove down there. That was in Pasadena. And so I just drove down there, and he was outside smoking a cigarette, and it was like in this old brick building that used to be like they used to like use it to move engines or something. Like it was an old mechanic place. It was just awesome. So it was just in Old Town Pasadena on some street, like a quiet street, and inside was just concrete floors and old brick building, like 100 years old. It's pretty dope. And yeah, just this group, just ragtag bunch of eclectic, geeky people. There was like 7 or 8 of them. We had an interview in their conference room, and like I talked to all of them, and they were just asking me questions like about what movies I liked and, you know, pop culture stuff. Just like what I later learned is, you know, they're just figuring out your personality, figuring out if you're an asshole and if they want to work with you. So and that was kind of my first experience with all that. And then we went up and looked at my work on a computer, my like website at the time, so my portfolio. And then they asked me questions about that. We sat down and had lunch, and yeah, from what I remember, it was just they were really welcoming, warm, and nice, and they were asking me questions. It was fun, and it was a really good experience for me. And I worked there. That was called White Moon Dreams, and I worked there for I think probably like 2 years almost. And that was just good for me, man. They were like an indie company. They took me to China twice, which was an amazing experience. Like they just so happened to get a job out there. And because they're an indie studio, they were trying to get work from wherever they could. They had a contact out there. And so on 2 separate occasions, I went out there for like a week or 2. And we were kind of like ambassadors, or I don't know. We just went there. We went to the game studio, and we told them how we do stuff. And we looked at their projects, and we gave them feedback. And we just kind of worked alongside a Chinese game studio for a few weeks, and then at night we go out and have crazy adventures, you know. And it was awesome, man. It was a cool experience, and it was just all from a forum post. And yeah, those people were a cool group of people, and I think it gave me a positive look at what some parts of the game industry are, because as you get more into big studios, it's less of a warm, fun, funky family, and more like, harsh and toxic. It can be
yeah.
toxic in certain things. I mean, a lot of money has come through the game industry.
Mm-hmm.
Money makes people crazy, and a lot of big group of people makes people managing a big group of people is fucking hard, no matter what.
Yeah.
And so the more people, the more crazy. But yeah, that was a cool experience, man. They moved their building to downtown LA, but they ran into some money problems, and I had to keep my career going. So I said, I'm gonna peace out. And they said, yeah, totally get it. And then I went to Turtle Rock, and I got hired from Turtle Rock because I went to school with some people at AI.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was one of the good things about AI. I got lucky again with like a class of people where several of them, like one of them, the guy who got me the job at Turtle Rock, Stephen Oakley, he just finished God of War, just came out. That's awesome.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, and then so we split up all over the industry, and we like still keep in touch and stuff.
Yeah.
So he got me the interview at Turtle Rock, and I went into Turtle Rock. I mean, I was kind of interviewing them. I was like, hey, Left 4 Dead is the shit, but what is this? Turtle Rock sounds weird. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's been a while since Left 4 Dead. What's going on? But my job at the time couldn't pay money. I was on unemployment at that time.
All right. Okay.
So I went over there, and in the interview when I went in, I was like, I'm going to interview these people just like they're interviewing me. I don't know about these people, but the studio looked awesome. They seemed like pretty cool dudes. And essentially at that time, the pitch was like, we're doing Left 4 Dead in space. And like, I love Avatar. Like Avatar had come out like 2 years before that or 3 years before that. Yeah. And I was like, dude, fuck yes, let's do this. And that was the beginning of Evolve. Like I was there for 5 years actually. Wow. And that was a cool experience. So that was like definitely a step up from White Moon. But that was the time after the interview and everything. And I sat down in the desk, like they had that chair from whatever, that $800 fancy ergonomic chair that all the major studios have. Oh yeah. And it was my own desk and everything. That was the oh shit moment. Yeah. I was like, this is like a real studio, and it's a big AAA game. It's like tens of millions of dollars, and I'm the guy making the characters, and so yeah, that was crazy. Yeah. But in retrospect, it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean that would have been a super interesting project to work on, and it's one of these things where, I mean, there's two sides to it where. I mean, I know I talk bad about the studio, but we need to address the fact that Evolve didn't do as well as I think the studio hoped it would have done.
Yeah.
And but then that's the thing where like I know people who, because it's like two sides, right? So the one side is people who work for 5 years on a game and then it gets cancelled and then your work never gets seen. Or there's one other side of it where people work on something for 5 years and it comes out and it's great, but it doesn't hit or sell as well as they were hoping money wise, and then it feels like it's not getting appreciated in that sense. But Evolve, when I first saw the concept, I was super interested. Even the stupidest thing, how the Evolve actual name managed.
Oh yeah, the 4v1.
Yeah,
that's pretty dope.
Yeah, man, it was fucking amazing. But I just I think as well because I was a fan of the team-based stuff and Left 4 Dead was such a huge thing at the time. I was like, oh yeah, this seems like a super awesome idea, but it just never seemed to translate to people.
It didn't work.
Yeah, but that happens, right? But then again,
yeah, that happens. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but then again, like I said, like your time spent there would have been super awesome working on it. So
oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the experience that you probably took away from that. And then obviously, from Turtle Rock, how did Respawn? How did it happen? How did you make the move?
Yeah, so it was after Evolve shipped and all that happened. So not only did it not really find a big audience, it was also, I mean, it had a lot of things that contributed to that, I would say, in hindsight.
Yeah.
But one of them was definitely the game itself.
Yeah.
Definitely like the game, the design of certain elements, the way that people were onboarded, the day-to-day experience, and then what happened in the final configuration, I would even say. I think the whole industry learned a lot since then. I don't know how much of it directly from Evolve, but you would never put a game out like Evolve anymore. Like at the time, we were in the middle of trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, the fact that characters were, behind, you had to work really hard to unlock a character.
Yeah.
Monsters were behind pay gates.
Yeah.
and it was difficult to learn. There was no easy way to practice and onboard and blah blah blah. So the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
But working on it was really awesome because of the experience. There was a huge learning experience through the whole time.
Yeah.
Including a lot of things of what not to do, like the things we're just talking about. Like we would never use the word DLC and sell characters. I mean, I would never do that anymore, and I think a lot of people wouldn't do that anymore. You know, the fact that Overwatch gives you characters for free, that's just by design. You know, that's a more gratifying and ethical feeling for players and people.
It's the same with.
But
I was gonna say it's the same with Dota 2, right? Like a lot of people prefer that over League because every hero is instantly accessible, you know, and it's and then the flip side of that is like you look at Battlefront 2 as well that just came out where like EA. Oh yeah, the whole controversy with the unlocking characters and the pay to win system. So. Yeah, I was gonna say you think people would learn, but yeah, it seems EA has had a trouble, sorting that kind of out, which sucks again because I know people down even south that have worked Criterion Games that have worked in the space battle part of Battlefront 2, and they were super psyched about the game, and yeah, the whole controversy thing just totally took away from the overall experience, and it really sucked because I'm such a Star Wars nerd, and you want those games to do well because if they do well, then they make more, and yeah, that was a whole thing as well. But anyway, so yeah, back to your point, yeah.
Yeah, so that similar thing happened with Evolve, and yeah, I can't believe people haven't learned. Maybe this will be the last big time. We were surprised.
Yeah.
And yeah, being Star Wars, I think maybe they even thought they could get away with it more because of that. They're like, oh, we don't have to be as as tight about it. And yeah, you do. Players don't like this feeling.
Because people get a bad egg and they get online and it can spread like absolute wildfire. So yeah.
But the greatest thing looking back on Evolve was that definitely there was some lunches where I'd go out with friends and colleagues and I'd be like, dude, I don't know if this is gonna work, or like this is crazy. You'd have some weeks like that, and you'd have some weeks like, oh, this might work out. But that was the dream. That's what felt so good. Is like we were a bunch of people, and a lot of people, because of Turtle Rock's situation, they had this history of making some games that were like last gen, but they were great. And now those people are like the seniors of this studio, right? Like I think like 12 people made Left 4 Dead. Wow. And at full capacity, Evolve was like almost 100 people. Wow. So by the time like they were hiring people on, and maybe I was like number 20, number 30 or something, but they hired a new generation of people.
Yeah.
So for a lot of us, it was the biggest game we'd ever worked on and the first big game we'd ever worked on.
Yeah.
And we were independent and we were getting funded, and it was an original idea. And we didn't know what to expect. So like every day you're coming to work, you play test every day. They have a great like dev mentality that way. Respawn does also. Like they're always trying to keep the build healthy. They're always trying to push through what people are working on so that during the daily play tests, you can see the game coming to life and give feedback and stick around after work and have conversations. Cool. So it really felt like we were all trying to make a game, and we were excited to release it onto the world. So even though the outcome wasn't like what we would want, it wasn't ideal. The experience was exactly why I got into games. So from that reason, I feel super lucky to have been a part of that, because going into it that it's a gamble. I mean, that's a big part of the game industry. It's kind of like the gold rush. Like it's a risk. Everyone knows it's a risk. And like what you were saying about games, coming out and then going away or having bad press or not making money. Like that's, I think that's most games. I think most games don't make money, at least not a lot of money. And so it's a crazy business that we're in, but it feels good while you're making it because, you never know. It's probably, I think I can only imagine, but I assume it's a lot like what it's like to work on a movie. If you're any of the jobs that aren't the major players, like if you're making armor or visual effects for some movie, you're hoping the movie comes out great. That'd be awesome, right? That's why you're doing it. But all you're doing is the best job you can do, and you're hoping that everyone else does it, and you're just kind of like a part of the team,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the feeling I have just now. It's almost a feeling of dread where, I was lucky enough for Nick and Armin, two of the guys I know who run Red Essence Games, to give me the opportunity to work on Mask of Semblance, and like because that is an indie studio project, and we're working with publishers, things like asking for money, and then obviously hoping that does well. it's a risk you feel when you're part of the team, right? You want it to be good so that, I mean, our dream obviously is that this game does really well, and then obviously off the back of that, we get a chance to make a sequel because a lot of people compare the game we're working on just now to Bastion when it came out years ago that Supergiant made. And then obviously they had a huge success with that, and now they've made other games like Transistor and Pyre. I think recently was their most recent release. But yeah, like that's the hope for us, that the game does so well that that there is an opportunity to make a sequel or something else, another IP. And yeah, it's a big fear. Yeah, you've got this constant fear in the back of your head. I mean, I watched a talk the other day on a GDC channel about a guy who used to work for, I think, Kotaku and a couple of other British games journalism websites, and then he made his own publishing house, and they published a game recently. I forget the name of it, but it's basically a downhill racing bike kind of game. But the whole talk was on how he marketed that game for like zero money, just by basically asking for favors constantly. But he put out a statistic that most games in Steam, most average indie games in Steam earn only $12,500 in their first week, and then, or week to month, and then I think within a year it's an average of $30,000. And you think of that return on the money you probably get to invest in the game, it's like a super small return. Like for a lot of people, it's not even 10% of their budget. So yeah, when people are putting millions in, and then you're expecting obviously something to come back that is going to pay the bills, it's really scary, man. It really can be hard because you're sitting there, worrying about it. So yeah, I can imagine with Turtle Rock was the same.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it wasn't as clear then too. I think we're gonna see the industry's gonna change. I mean, the industry keeps changing, and I think the landscape's gonna look totally different in 5 years. And I think a lot of it is kind of what you're noticing now with this risk. I think the big difference is the amount of competition today, and it has to do with Steam also. But when you look at what the models, like the model of spending $70 to $100 million on your game, and then putting it in every store on Earth in a box, and then making that money back, that model seems old now. And I think the big players are trying to figure out what to do next. Definitely streaming seems like it's going to be on the horizon, right? Like it seems like eventually there'll just be a Netflix for games, and there won't be boxes anymore. But when you look at what the big studios are doing, spending all that money, even like in the example that you cited of someone marketing their game for very little. Look at these big games that are at the top of popularity, that at the top of streaming and stuff. A game like PUBG is made by some indies. Like a small amount of people. League of Legends and Dota are based on Dota, which was a mod in Warcraft 3. Counter-Strike was a mod. Left 4 Dead was by a small amount of people. Portal was like a college project. TF2 was a mod. So it seems like you definitely cannot say that the huge game studios know how to make a hit game. And it's really hard to say anybody knows how to make a hit game, but definitely it seems like a lot of the ones that really strike true and become what you might call classics, one that they hold the test of time. It seems like they comes from a relatively small amount of people that agree on something, that they feel strongly enough, like there's some kind of mission for making the game, an idea that's, compels them all the way through. At least that's what it seems like to me, like some kind of true inspiration, you might call it, in an artsy-fartsy term. And then we kind of glom onto it and try to, with money, what they can do is bring that budget, bring that polish. But still, in today's climate, it feels like definitely people. I'm personally not as excited about Call of Duty games, right? Like that I used to. There's only like so many times, and we kind of even feel it with movies. I mean, even now, I'm gonna go see the new Avengers movie, but I don't know. Am I excited about it? I don't know. I think I am. I don't know. So
no, I mean, it's
as much as it can be good, we all like new things too.
I think it's like all the games you listed, I think are experiments of an original idea. Like PUBG, the 1 versus 100. It was a tried and tested thing people have tried to do, but for some reason that formula just stuck with them and they got super popular. Like I even think back to indie devs where the guys that made Cuphead recently.
Cuphead's great looking.
Like that idea. I mean, I think they passed $150 million in sales, but like Yeah, they
That was
made it.
awesome.
Yeah, for the budget they think they threw at it, but it was that original idea, right? The hand-drawn 1930s element, like
Yeah,
that was the big thing that hooked people. And I think the hook is that's the hard part, right? You can have a game that you spend like Angry Birds is the perfect example of
yeah, exactly.
people who spent next to no money making a game, and look how many billions that has shipped
Yeah,
in
yeah.
sales. And
Now
yeah,
here's this exact we can use this as the total like little metaphor for what we're talking about here.
yeah,
So in a little studio makes a game like Angry Birds, and like that exact story was, I mean, I'm not going to know the numbers, but it was
yeah,
something like they made that was like their 20th game,
uh-huh,
and they that was their strategy, was we're going to make a bunch of little fun games until one becomes popular, and then we're going to, pour all of our eggs into that basket. And that was their last real shot, and it was their last chance that ended up being a hit. So it
mm-hmm,
makes a cool story for them,
mm-hmm,
but it also points to what's going on here. Like, it is hard to know what will be popular. And it's
yeah,
similar to what musicians do with music, right? They'll put out a single,
mm-hmm,
and then a couple of weeks later they'll put out another single, and those are specifically chosen to be different flavors
yeah,
to see which one is more popular,
yeah,
so that they can lean that way, right? They're like little samples.
mm-hmm,
But if you're a big studio and you're doing what you've been doing, which is you're going to spend $100 million and 2 to 3 years to make a game and then
yeah,
just launch it, that's so much more risky, it seems like.
yeah,
So it seems like in today's climate, what people are going to try to learn to do is to be more transparent, like more fluid. I think so. In the example of mobile games and some other bigger studios than just mobile, I've been doing this, but
yeah,
they'd rather make several small games than one
yeah,
huge game. And I think, when you're talking about risk, that's a way to minimize a little bit of risk, or at least improve your chances of making a game that is profitable, because we do need to make some money to keep making games.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, trying to get back on track what we were talking about, but yeah, like I was just wondering, because you talk about sleeper hits, but what an interesting thing was, and I knew you before you posted this, but this was obviously a blow up for you. But when did the Hansa project start, and was that in between
Oh
Turtle
yeah.
Rock and Respawn? Was that a kind of go between when you were between studios, or?
Yeah. And so that makes sense in the timeline that you talked about too. Yeah. So I was working on that. So that was at the end of Evolve, and I was doing that in my free time just to
For people
be
who don't,
working on something.
yeah, for people who don't know, before Jason gets into it, Jason made a fan art of Hanzo from Overwatch, but also it isn't Hanzo, it's Hansa, so it's the female version of Hanzo, as she would be realized, sorry, in the game. So yeah,
Yeah. I did it. I mean, it was a moment of inspiration because of Overwatch, and also at the time, like I felt like making a character. I had just come off Evolve, and there wasn't a need to make characters at the time. And so I was doing it for my own sake at home, and then I was looking around for jobs, which would eventually became the Respawn job. And there was a couple weeks in between the jobs,
yeah,
and Turtle Rock was a 3D Studio Max studio, and Respawn is a Maya studio. And I
right,
used to use Maya. I never used Max until Turtle Rock.
right,
So I thought, hey, good enough excuse to try to like warm up. I didn't want to show up to Respawn and look like I didn't know what I was doing. So
yeah,
I thought I'll take this 2 weeks to finish Hansa, and I'll make her bow and I'll make all the things in Maya and learn Maya 2017.
yeah,
And that's what I did. And also testing like a pipeline, a workflow that I wanted to try,
mhm,
that is going straight from ZBRUSH to Keyshot, and just using like automatic mapping, essentially cutting out all the very tedious shit you'd have to do for production, and
right.
just make a character to make cool images.
Cool. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
interesting as well, because Keyshot is something I have seen people, even the concept guys, use to texture and render really super quickly, and get kind of like a quick result kind of turnover, like you say, without having to do the tedious stuff, which is, unwrap and UV and then fire it into, your PBR, which is substance or whatever else you're using. But yeah, how long did the project take you in total to do?
Oh man, that one's probably a couple months, because it was just a couple hours here and there, and then I finished it, sometime within that 2 weeks.
Right.
It would definitely be faster now. I didn't use Substance.
Yeah.
And for the hair, I used ZBrush's hair. That was another thing I wanted to try, was fiber mesh. And nowadays, I think I might use Arnold, although maybe not because of the keyshot bridge. So it kind of all depends on the workflow you're doing. It definitely worked out for keyshot going straight from ZBrush, but the hair tools in ZBrush are pretty like rudimentary, so they're pretty harsh. Like if you make a mistake, you have to start over, that kind of thing.
Oh shit, yeah.
So it takes time.
Yeah, and then again, was that a thing where, because it did kind of blow up. I think even Kotaku featured it at one point. Because I'm actually sure I shared it on your page. I was like, oh shit, dude, Kotaku's featuring your sculpt. Yeah, was that like, was your like Twitter blown up? Was like people like messaging in ArtStation like, holy shit, dude, this is amazing? Or kind of what was the journey for that once you posted it?
Yeah, definitely. That was my most like well received piece, and I think that might be my last or my second last kind of personal piece. But that definitely goes to show that, you know, doing personal work is hugely important, like for a number of reasons. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's safe to say, like, other than going from Turtle Rock to Respawn, because having shipped AAA game characters definitely like brings validity to you. Yeah. But it's the personal pieces, I think, that get people's attention. You know, that might make your work or your portfolio more shareable, 100%. And that's what you want. You know, so
yeah. I mean, it even goes back to I don't know if you probably all know Jamaro Kindred from Blizzard. Like he made the website famously years ago called iwanttoworkforblizzard.com, and just filled it with art that he thought belonged in the Blizzard universe. Sent it to I think one of the ADs at the time, and they were literally like, "Yeah, cool, when can you start?" So, but that was for him a personal project, right? He wasn't. Like I remember we were just at IMAG again in Paris, and there was a person, this is going to sound horrible, but he was from Pixar, and I cannot remember his name, but he was doing a talk on character creation and angles and cinematic views, but he said a quote during the talk which 100% sat with me still, and I think I would tell to every single person that's listening. He said, number one tip, work like you already have the job. And I was like, yeah, sold. Right, exactly. 100% on the nose, yeah. He's like, if you can't be doing 8 hours a day of your job at home, like, how are you expected to do that in a studio environment? Like, you know, if you're not already working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, doing your craft, then you're really going to struggle once you work in a professional work environment. So yeah, like, work like you already have the job. I think it is one of the best pieces of advice anybody could ever give an aspiring student.
I like it. It's a simple way to put it. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, so you're walking into Respawn, you've got the job, and then again, I think you posted it on Facebook, and we were all congratulating you. But what were those first few weeks like? Was that a bigger step from Turtle Rock? Because Respawn, I think at the time, because they'd shipped the first Titanfall, they were probably off the back of that, so they were quite a big studio at the time, or.
Pretty similar. They were a little bit bigger. Yeah, they're a little bit bigger. And they've also had that history. The Evolve was Turtle Rock's first AAA game, and most of the people at Respawn had been working together since Call of Duty 4, which to me was cool. I was like geeking out, you know, because that's one of my favorite games. So the interview was like fun because of that. Because I was like, yo, I love COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2, and then when they ask like what my favorite game is, and I say Counter-Strike, they're like, oh yeah, this is perfect, you know. So that's what was cool. Is Respawn was a good culture fit. I love first-person shooters, and I love making characters. Titanfall, I really love the Titanfall universe. I love the sci-fi stuff, you know. So I thought it's like a lot of things for me to sink my teeth in.
Yeah, and were you? I mean, because you talked about coming in the tail end of TF2, like, what kind of were you doing day to day? Were you working on some of the Titans? Were you doing more pilots? What was your kind of like main day to day stuff you were doing at the time before you started shifting projects?
I just did people. That's kind of like I usually get pigeonholed there, which is cool. That's kind of like what I put on my portfolio. You know, I assume that I'm getting hired to do people. And at the end of TF2, though, it was a little bit different because, you know, they wanted someone to hit the ground running and finish up some stuff, like check off some things from the long list of things they needed to finish before shipping. So I did do a couple scientists that were just in the background of the time mission. And actually, one of the bodies turned into like one of the heads just turned my body asset, just like recolored it and used it as a costume for one of the other characters, which I thought was cool. And I did some body bags. I did a couple different variations. That was for a level. And they're just like sci-fi vacuum sealed bodies in bags, and then like one that's ripped up and burned for single player mission. And then I did some hanging hazmat suits. And yeah, so each of these are like several day turnarounds. The scientists are probably a couple weeks. And yeah, so it's just stuff like that. Like they would just feed me work that they'd like to have in.
Yeah.
They're probably kind of onboarding me. But at the same time, it was a hectic time. Like it was some late nights. You know, some other people, shit was on fire. I was just trying to, you know, it was pretty cool for me because I was new. They probably didn't want to like kill me. So they were giving me jobs that they would like finished. But, you know, if we didn't do them, the game would still ship and be fine. But they were like extra like wish list stuff. So that's the stuff I was doing. Other than I guess the scientists, which, you know, they wanted to sprinkle them all around the level so that it looked like, you know, scientists work there. So that was probably the biggest priority task. And the other ones were, yeah, like kind of wish list improvements. So yeah, but still, even though it was a few things, I was proud to be a part of it, even in a small way. I think the game came out really great. I think the single player is great. A lot of people that love single players really like playing that game.
Yeah.
And
I love the game,
yeah, I played hundreds of hours online.
Yeah,
so
good. Just a quick question before we get into the kind of final subject, but because I've not really asked many people this, but you may actually be interested in kind of relaying this to people who, you know, because we've talked about like, you know, the day-to-day stuff, but what do your days kind of look like at Respawn Studios these days? Like, what's your kind of 9 to 5? I mean, I don't know the hours you would work, but what is your typical day? How do you what's the pipeline for you getting in the studio in the morning? Do you guys like get in and then you have a stand up or a meeting and then you work on stuff day to day? What's your kind of day to day tasks?
All right, I'll let you know. Respawns. And being a character artist is a bit different. This would be different depending on who you're asking, but
yeah. So
for me, I get into work at 10. Turtle Rock started at 11, which is like the most chill schedule you'll ever have. But yeah, I get into 10, which is early for game devs. No, but some people get in earlier too, by the way. It's very fluid, which I like. A lot about the game industry is very casual, like maybe too casual. You know, you got to be able to like, it's like a locker room. So you got to be able to, as long as you finish your work, you're good. So I come in around 10, and then I just check emails and stuff. I'll either go to lunch I'll either order lunch in or go to the gym. They have a gym on campus, which is fantastic. So I'll go to the gym at lunch and then get some food and come back. And if it's a normal day, like I guess maybe the majority of what my life is in the middle of a character project. So there's usually some stuff that happens at the beginning of a character project or task that's assigned to me. And then stuff happens at the end. Sometimes stuff happens in the middle if things come up, but generally, you're just left alone. So like I manage my own time, and then if something comes up, I go talk to people. But there's these major phases of like the high poly. I want to get a sanity check, and then when I'm starting to texture, get a sanity check, that stuff. But I pretty much just am off doing my own thing, which fits me really well. We have a meeting every Friday where all the art team. There's a pit of artists, and we'll get into a meeting room, and then we'll just show on a projector the stuff that we're working on right now, and then provide feedback on each other, and just it's kind of like a state of what's going on every week. We'll have a kickoff of a character at the beginning of a character with everyone involved from the departments, so that we're all on the same page. Because we want to keep the vision throughout the whole place. But it's pretty chill. If you were to just come in on me on a random day, I probably just would have headphones on, and I would be in ZBRUSH probably on a Cintiq, and then if I'm not drinking coffee, then it's probably not 4, and then there you go.
That sounds awesome. So that's cool. So I mean, definitely the kind of last thing I want to touch on before we kind of break off and I'll let you enjoy the rest of your day is you were talking about, before we kind of got into the interview, that you're about to launch an online course or class. Because I don't know much about it, so just kind of dive in, if you want to kind of share with us what that's going to involve and when that's coming out and what's the kind of in and outs of it. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, cool. So last year I just started teaching, any kind of real capacity. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while. Like I said before, both my parents were teachers, and they
they made it sound good. You know, they were good teachers, and I always like looked up to them, and I thought it might be something I could do, especially this specific thing, like just things that I know about. So because I had this YouTube channel, kind of the mission of the YouTube channel was just as a way to do work and share it, and just I always kind of hope to demystify some of the stuff in CG. It's similar to what we were talking about with ZBRUSH. It hurts me that people don't want to jump in there, and I understand why, but there's some fun things and some satisfying things that I think everybody would enjoy. Yeah. So my mission was just to get more people to take the plunge and get a little bit comfortable, with making things on computers and just try to have fun.
Yeah.
And so while doing that, I got into the video game character thing because that's what I do professionally. And then it became immediately clear that YouTube wasn't going to be the best platform, because a lot of these people are very new to these topics, and also there's a huge range. Some people know more than others, right? So some people are casually coming, some people have some experience, and I would get message from people that genuinely wanted to know more stuff, and I thought, all right, well, if I'm gonna do it, and I got contacted. I was actually working on my own course, and then I got contacted by Edward from Mold 3D. And he was looking for someone, and it was like the right time for me. Yeah. And he proposed a partnership to teach a course for the whole character, like the whole character process. Oh, wow. And I thought that's gonna be a huge topic and a big course. But he was like, hey, not a lot of classes out there, and like I say, it was similar to the kinds of topics I was talking about on YouTube. And I thought this could really give me like the chance to really teach people that want to know. So I assume it's a small amount of people, but the people that were really serious, we've been launching it since last year, where you subscribe, or when you sign up to the course, then you not only get, it's like 10 hours of video. So I made all these different lessons. I broke up the whole workflow, and I do a demonstration, but also we meet every week in like a Q&A with my webcam, and I can like work on their machine, and I can just give them any kind of one-on-one feedback that way. And then once a week also, they would submit work, and I would give them a 5 to 10 minute like personal video where I like paint over their work and like just give them tips and insights and feedback to drive them and to hopefully grow as much as they can during the time of the course. Nice. And that's been working out really well. But we've also been thinking, it'd be great to have the course there for the people that maybe aren't as serious or don't have that kind of money or that kind of time, because, hey, making a character in 8 weeks is like a big commitment. And I think if you're the most serious kind of person, like if you want to do it professionally, or you want to level up really quick, then by all means do the full course. But we're working on being able to have the course just accessible, so someone can just get the course and then stream the videos whenever and wherever they are. And that's it. So it'll be a cheaper course, but it'll be like, just for more people. So we're going to launch that in a few months probably. I can give you the link. Maybe we can just link it down below. Right now, the best thing to do would be to go to the Mold 3D Academy website. The link's a little long, but I can give it to you, and then you can sign up. There's a little video there, but then you can sign up to the email list too. So as soon as we have like a real date, we'll let you know. So this is just really for people that are interested in making game character models, 3D models for going right into games and like the Unreal Engine and stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's actually funny enough. It's one of the things I've seen, not fully, like the full process. I think the last one I saw was Mark Burnett on CubeBrush. He done the PBR character tutorial.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yep.
And that was one of the few I think I've seen that takes the whole start to finish aspect of it. I think it is good because pipeline is important, right? I think people don't incorporate pipeline as much into, how you take something from initial concept to final ready, like game ready asset.
Yeah, that's it. It's the whole thing, and that's why this is kind of a tricky topic. And I chose to try to do the fewest amount of programs while keeping the programs relevant. And the fewest amount I think is just ZBrush, Maya, and Substance Painter. Maya is pretty much interchangeable, I'd have to say, but Maya is definitely still an industry standard. And I chose it too because if you're a student, you can download it and use it for free for 3 years if you get the educational version. So it makes it accessible, hopefully, to people that are serious, like people like me, essentially, or the hardcore nerds out there that want to make game characters, So I think three programs is as few as you're going to get, and then you can kind of choose whatever engine you want. I mean, Unreal's free, so it's hard to beat that, but I did demonstrate Marmoset Viewer because it's so user friendly. Marmoset
yeah.
is fantastic.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well that sounds awesome. Jay, and obviously, the guys who are on here, I'll make sure all the links and all the relevant information is below, so you can check out not only Jason's work but also the upcoming course. And like he says, you can sign up for the course that's coming. And yeah, if you haven't seen Jay's work, go check it out. It is spectacular. I definitely the Hansa project in particular, because obviously, yeah, that got a lot of kind of press and media, and it is such a well put together project. And yeah, just to round out, just to say thank you very much for coming on, Jason, and giving up your time. I know you're super busy, so it's an
Of course, man.
absolute honour to speak to you. Finally, I know we've been back and forward a couple of times trying to get this organised, but
Yeah.
but yeah, that's life, right? When you're super busy, especially with Respawn. I'm imagining kind of ramping up. Your days will be quite hectic at the moment. So yeah, it's good to get a chance to sit down and talk. And obviously, I think it's always great when artists give back with teaching, because yeah, it is the way. I think somebody always said the quote that when you take the elevator up, your job is to send it back down. And make
Oh
sure.
wow, I haven't heard that, but that sounds great. Yeah, I believe in that.
Yeah, totally. I definitely feel it even sometimes when I speak to younger students as well. And again, I don't have a ton of experience, but the 5 years I've been in and out to events, and you pick up these certain stuff that you can pass on, and it's great just to give somebody a couple of, even just telling people what ArtStation is, because it's almost stellar the amount of people I see that want to get in this industry that don't even know what ArtStation is, and I'm like, as soon as they open it for the first time, they're like, wow, like their eyes light up with all the work that's on it. But yeah, it's always good to give back, so definitely 100% I'll be looking forward to that course. I'll probably be hopefully one of your first sign-ups. So yeah, definitely.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you too, man, for having me, and thank you for all the kind words, and I had fun, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally awesome. It's actually probably one of the longer interviews I've had, but yeah, I think it's fun when you get to just discuss game industry stuff and see somebody who's on the inside talk about the way the industry's working. So,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's a rare thing. You want to try and keep it 100%, like you said, the art stuff, but getting it to talk about the Turtle Rock stuff, because yeah, it's always interesting to see, because I know I had my opinions about the way Evolve turned out, but speaking to somebody who was on the inside of it, seeing how it turned out, yeah, it's interesting to see your perspective as well, because yeah, you can't always it's the kind of thing I hate now, because I work within the industry, and I have wanted to work in the industry, so when people automatically dismiss a game straight away and talk about how shit it is, and people have spent 4 years of their life making it, yeah, it can be totally disheartening, because yeah, you know how hard people work in these things, and for people just to turn around and yeah, but then it's the opposite effect, right? God of War just came out, and there was a whole Cory Barlog, the game director, done a reaction video of him reading review scores, and as soon as he saw it had a 94 on Metacritic, he was in tears. He was like so happy, but that's a lot of sacrifice for people.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really happy for them.
Yeah.
That seemed like, and I think I don't think that they knew that it was going to be good. That it's hard making games, man. You really don't know what's going to happen until it happens. So it's great to see people's dreams coming true, and the world can always use more great games.
Yeah, definitely, man. Okay, dude. Right. Well, thanks again, guys who are listening. Yeah, check out the rest of the podcast we do on the channel. Remember how to subscribe, and check out Jason's work. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Peace.